The 4th of January 2025 brings up the 50th anniversary of the Chairboys' first time in the third round of the FA Cup. They took on high-flying Middlesbrough back then, and to find out more about this famous occasion, WanderersTV popped up to see John D. Taylor, Vice Chairman of the Wycombe Wanderers Ex-Players Association.
In 1975, Middlesbrough were Division 1 leaders when they drew Wycombe in the FA Cup. Now that is like saying Arsenal, Liverpool, now, today, top of the Premier League. There was nowhere they could go higher than that. They had Jack Charlton as the manager. They had players like Graham Souness, Bobby Murdoch, Willie Madron, David Mills, fantastic side, and played really good football, attacking football, and were deserved leaders of the division when they came to Wycombe.
Here's Stuart Bohm, the Middlesbrough skipper, waiting for the toss-up with the Wycombe skipper, Alan Phillips. The referee of this cup tie, incidentally, is Mr. Porter from Bolton. And so now we get the toss-up, and that in fact was the first thing in the afternoon. There was one in fact by Wycombe Wanderers, and they decided that the team should change ends.
Wycombe were in the Isthmian League, which was probably regarded as the top semi-pro. That was the season they turned semi-pro, but Wycombe's were still amateurs. They weren't paid officially, which meant that in fact that they had to get time off work, if you go on later to the replay, to actually turn up at Ayresome Park. So the difference between them was quite considerable, although of course the money in the professional game at that stage didn't make them multi-millionaires. Wycombe had a great tradition, and 12,000 fans turned up for this particular game, of which 11,500 were Wycombe fans. Having heard the draw, I very excitedly went to Ayresome Park for an interview. I was doing Jack Charlton's ghosted column for the evening newspaper, and I said to him, "Have you heard the draw?" And he said, "What draw?" And I said, "The FA Cup." And he said, "Oh no, who we got?" And I said, "Wycombe Wanderers." And he said, "Who the are they?" And I said, "Well, they are the best amateur side in the country at the moment. They've won the league 3 times, and in fact that season they went on to win it for the 4th time in 5 years under Brian Lee. But his team were the team that played every Saturday, apart from one injured player who was Bobby Murdoch. Otherwise, as I say, John Hicton, David Mills, Willie Madron, Stuart Bohm, the captain, a really good team, and all of those were in the squad that came down here.
And what a contrast there is. Wycombe with their furniture workers, their car workers, estate agents, school teachers, and 3 of them had to work this very morning. Middlesbrough make 1 change. Bobby Murdoch is out through suspension, and Peter Bryan wears the number 7 shirt.
And I said, and of course you know about the pitch. And he looked at me and he said, "What do you mean, what about the pitch?" And I said, "Well, there's an 11-foot drop from side to side." "Ah, Taylor, are off." He didn't believe it. He didn't believe it until the coach drew up at Loakes Park on that afternoon, got out of the coach and came into the ground, looked around, saw me, came up, grabbed me by the scruff of the neck, and he said, "You weren't lying, were you?" That's how much, when you think about the detail that managers go into today, I still find that, even 50 years later, quite incredible.
And now the noise really begins to swell around the hills of Buckinghamshire as Middlesbrough kick off, and straight back to their goalkeeper Jim Platt. They're attacking the goal on the right in the all-red strip with the 1 white band. Wycombe Wanderers in light blue shirts, dark blue shorts and light blue socks.
It was a game where Wycombe played like a team of Wycombe today. They were really a top amateur semi-pro side, and they played a remarkable game that afternoon. We all remember, and we will remind Alan Phillips, I'm sure, about the header that he had late in the game from a Terry Reardon free kick that could have won the game.
It's going to be Terry Reardon again who's going to take the free kick. And again, Middlesbrough have paid Wycombe the respect of bringing everybody back. Hit firmly and low, and not in, just a fraction Reaction wide by Phillips.
And really, Wycombe deserved to win that match. They played really good football. They had a fine, settled side. They had Tony Horseman up front, who could score goals. They had Kennedy, as I say, Reardon, and Holyfield in midfield, who were real hard workers, but they had skill as well. And it's really sad that as we celebrate 50 years, the three missing players are that midfield trio who really did make them tick.
Well, he's gone past Phillips. Still with Fogg, and a long raking shot, and Maskell had to go down well to get that one. It's the sort of thing that Middlesbrough have got to try to get this breakthrough. Good long raking shot by Fogg.
John Maskell, if you think a goalkeeper plays for one club for 16 years, over 700 appearances, that is just magnificent. The replay was a game where suddenly people took notice of him, because the second game was not like the first. The second game was one-way traffic, and Wycombe had a job getting their players actually to Ayresome Park, because some of them were school teachers, solicitors, various other professions, which meant they had to work on the Monday and then flew up to Ayresome Park late on Monday night to actually play the game on Tuesday. The good thing really was that David Armstrong, who came down to our ex-players' dinner when we celebrated this event 25 years on, scored the goal almost into injury time. And Brian Lee's reaction there was, thank goodness you scored then, because if it had gone to extra time, we probably would have conceded 10.
Jack, the fellas behind you, how much of a fright did they give you today?
Fright? I haven't stopped smiling since the end of the game.
But what about the 90 minutes before that?
Well, we'll not get put on the rack as much for as long a time as we were today. And I was delighted with the result. 0-0 draw suited us fine, you know, but I don't think we really deserved it.
Were you ever desperately afraid that it would go the other way? That
I asked Jimmy how long it was to go, and he said 25 minutes. I said, we'll never make it. Serious.
It's a great thing that we have with the Ex-Players Association. We've talked about it so many times. We don't think there's another association like it in the country. And the players come back at various times. They're not there all the time, but for a match like this, 50 years on, we have everybody in the squad coming back, apart from Keith Searle, who's just come out of hospital, and Tony Horseman, who unfortunately is unwell, and then of course the three guys that we no longer have. But everybody else, that includes Dylan Evans, who was the sub that day and played. We've got Dave Bullock coming back, and Dave was a great all-round player, and slightly left aside when we talk about the team that played Middlesbrough. Just a wonderful team spirit, and a wonderful squad, and the fact that we have got them back together again, I think, is absolutely fantastic.
They've earned themselves a good payday with a return to Ayresome Park. It's a 0-0 draw, and in many ways that's a victory for Wycombe Wanderers, certainly for the character of the side, for the determination and for the skill they've shown. None more so than the man you saw there, Alan Phillips, the skipper.
There'll be people who will remember this game being played, and there'll be a legion of fans who weren't born then, who are keen to learn about the history. You mentioned it earlier on, the spirit of the team that day at Loakes Park was similar to the one of today. But the blueprint for Wycombe Wanderers has always been there, right?
I don't understand it really. I mean, I've been involved in football all my life, and I've looked and covered other teams. Brian Lee, I think, set the tone, that he looked at the person as well as the footballer, and if they didn't fit into what his mind was a good person, they didn't come to Wycombe. And I mean, he was lucky. He worked at Bisham Abbey. Wycombe were lucky because he worked at Bisham Abbey. He was able to study these people when they were coming down for England amateur internationals, British Isles internationals, and decide which players he might approach and say, look, you could come and join us at Wycombe. And he I think probably set that standard, because before that it was mainly local players, and of course that in itself engenders a certain team spirit, and that's why people remember Tony Horseman being local. John Maskell, Oxford, but we'll accept him just. There's always been that local angle to it, but developed into a great personality, great guys as well.